Hey everybody, it is Friday and that means that it's time for the weekly WP Roundup with BJ. That's me. And we are going to be talking about the best news, the best tutorials, the coolest resources that I was able to round up this week that have to do with WordPress. Feel free to throw anything that you have in the comments. We try to be a very open show. I'm going to adjust this just a second. We try to be a very open show where we can talk back and forth and hopefully get your problem solved if you have any. There are a lot of links in the description of this video, so if you're new and haven't caught the stream before, feel free to follow along and click through.
Everybody, it is Friday, and that means that it's time for the weekly...
Hear that? My tab was not muted. But yeah, we try to make sure that we give as much love to the content creators who put this stuff together as we possibly can. So, please click through and follow along. So I'm seeing a lot of people chiming in on YouTube. We have some folks on Facebook. Just want to say hello to everybody and thank y'all for joining us. I guess to get kicked off, I want to remind you guys, I haven't reminded in a few weeks, that Elegant Themes does accept open blog submissions. That if you have an idea of something that you wanted to share with the Elegant Themes audience and the rest of the Divi Nation, feel free to click the link. It's the very first one in the description of this video, and you can see our process to get set up. We think you probably have some really fantastic ideas, and we want to showcase those. So you can also get paid by doing that, so that's also kind of fantastic. So check it out and let's see what you can come up with. The first thing, and really the only real news that came out this week, I mean, we're prepping for Gutenberg. 5.0 is coming up, and the release date is exactly 1 month from today. Today is October 19th, and it is slated for November 19th, that we have 4 weeks until the official Gutenberg release date. So we are closing in on that. So they did announce that despite what Matt Mullenweg said last year at WordCamp US, there is going to be a new theme for WordPress that comes out in 5.0, and they have introduced / released-ish it. You can download it. There's the first link under news where you can see the new Gutenberg-friendly 2019 theme. This one's actually pretty neat. I like it. And it's kind of built on the foundation of one that was a Gutenberg theme that I can't even remember the name of it right now off the top of my head. I think it's linked in the article that someone had put together really to have a whole theme that worked with Gutenberg that was designed specifically for the new editor. And this one is what basically came of it. The Gutenberg starter theme. I mean, that's what it's officially called. And there's one that's _S that it's also based on. So that's a really, really important thing to check out, because that's going to be coming out. I'm sure we're all going to have clients who are using that and wanting us to do something with their site, as well as needing to know how to take those customizations and move them into Divi. So there's that. That's out. I see some questions on YouTube. So we're going to use Divi as a business platform. Would like to know if we can integrate charts or if you're going to add a module for charts. Rick, I haven't heard about that, to be honest. That's one that I honestly don't know. I think you can hack your way around to get some charts in there with different bars, and but I don't know if there's a particular graph chart module and in the works. That's the word. I wish there would. That's a very good idea. There may be a third-party plugin that'll do that. There are a lot of... I see Uncle Social's talking about Pavel. I may have missed I missed a question. Pavel Kazi asked if you could please tell me how to add CSS to the Divi theme. And if you, this is a really important question. This is something that is very actually hard to do. Hard to do in the figuring out where it goes. There are two places that I really suggest adding it, and that's under your appearance and then theme customizer. There at the very bottom of it, there is an additional CSS box. You can do a live preview of any CSS that you add in on that. That also mirrors under the Divi theme options, that if you go in your WordPress admin panel, go into Divi and then theme options, and at the very bottom of the very bottom of the general tab, there is a box that says custom CSS. You can add that in there. Whatever changes you make to either the additional CSS or the custom CSS under Divi, both of them mirror one another. So you're not going to have any kind of problem using whichever one you're most nearby. If you're already in the Divi options and you want to use that, go ahead. I use both of them interchangeably whenever I'm messing with something. Additionally, I think that Uncle Social said it, you can, in the advanced tab of every module and row and everything that we have in the builder, you can go into the advanced tab, and there is a box in there for different pieces of CSS, different selectors, so that you can either do the main element, before or after element, and add element-specific CSS if you need to. I use that very sparingly because most of the time these days you can do it with anything that you would need to do for a specific module. You would probably be doing either with the Divi options or targeting that particular class or ID with it in your style sheet. But you can absolutely do it in the module section. It absolutely does. I see Pavel ask if the module section doesn't accept the CSS code. Absolutely it does. Just be aware that when you load it in on the modules, when you do that, that's on a page basis and on a module by module basis. So if you do that, you may have to be repeating code, which adds a little bit of bulk to your site. I've known some people to load a code module on there. I may actually have that on my my fitness blog right now. I can't remember if I fixed that or not, of a code module that just has one-page specific CSS on it. I've seen people use row-specific CSS with a code module before. But yeah, you can absolutely do that. And I see Chromium, is there a way, Chromium Flash, is there a way to remove the effects a child theme has done to Divi? Can you expand on that just a little bit for me, Chromiums? I'll move along just a little bit as you expand on that for me, if you don't mind. And I'll definitely get back to that, or someone in the comments will too. I just need to understand a little bit more if you can. So while I'm waiting on that, I wanted to point out to you guys, it's been a week or so since the new dynamic content was released on for Divi, that if you haven't updated your Divi installation yet, then know that when you do, you're going to get the new dynamic content modules. I wanted to point out, you guys were asking for different tutorials. The word was tutorials, and I couldn't think of it really quick. You're asking for different tutorials to walk you through some of the dynamic content that was kind of hard to wrap your minds around, which it is, and I totally understand that. So we have two of them. I've linked them under news, where you can check out the Divi dynamic content tutorial live stream that Mac did. That was the new Divi feature live stream from this past Monday. He had really good results with it. He said there was a lot of action in the comments, so you'll be able to follow along with that on either Facebook or YouTube. There is a saved video on either one, and I've linked to the YouTube video on here. As well as there is a blog that Jason did this week with his use case live stream of how to use Divi's dynamic content feature to design a dynamic post layout. This is how I learned how to use dynamic content. I'm going to be honest. I sat in on the conversation for part of the stream on this one, and Jason explained it so well that it's way easier for me to really wrap my mind around and grasp what that particular feature does. And at this point in time, it'll be a lot more robust once we get the theme customizer, as I don't know what that was, as the theme customizer in the future. But this is a good starting point that you're going to be able to use. And both Jason and Mac really knock it out of the park on helping people understand. So I really, really think you guys would get a lot out of those, because goodness knows I did. Excuse me, my mouth gets so dry. I see Chromium Flash has updated, expanded on the thing, on the question. I've activated a child theme, which changed the functionality of how the navigation bar worked. However, I didn't like the changes it had done, but deleting the child theme from the themes didn't work. Did you, Chromium, are any of the files still there? That's odd that it didn't work deleting it from themes, but are the files actually still there in the folders within your host? Because whenever I've had issues like that, where what it did with headers and things like that, I was able to go in and then remove like header.php or single.php, and it would revert back to what it had overwritten in the parent theme. If they're there, then that's what I would think it is. If the files are not there, then that might be a save your style sheets, do a backup of your theme and everything, and that might need to be either a reinstall of the theme, which is very simple to do through FTP especially, or it could be restoring a backup. I haven't ever heard of that happening myself, or had that happen myself without files still being in the child theme directory, despite moving them or taking it away from a theme, the themes page in the admin panel. But that would be my guess. If anybody else has had that happen, let me know, because that one I'm not entirely sure. If there aren't files there, then I don't have any clue where that could be. Yeah, check that. You haven't tried that? Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. You're quite welcome. That's what I've had happen. That would definitely be my first go-to on that. But before you do anything with that, make sure you do a backup. Use Updraft or something to back up your site, because goodness gracious knows I may have ruined a few sites myself by not doing that when I went in and looked at the file system. Pavel asks, what should I do in order to copy the CSS code and put it into a Divi module? In the advanced settings, the main element section doesn't allow either copy or paste. Pavel, have you tried both keyboard shortcuts and mouse commands? I've had, not in particularly with Divi, not specifically with Divi, but I've had some programs where I could right-click and paste, or I could use like Command or Control V, and that would paste when one or the other wouldn't work. If one of those doesn't work, if you've tried both of them and they don't work within that, like Uncle Social said, that's a live chat issue, because that will have to be on our support team, because that sounds like it would be something where there is something blocking that for some reason or another. Yeah, that's what I would know, because like I've said, I've had either keyboard commands not work, or right-clicking and selecting paste that way not working, and the other one would. But if they both don't work, support. So cool. Y'all try that. Malcolm says he can do it with Command V. If you're on Windows, it'll be Control V. But try that. So if it worked for him and it doesn't work for you, absolutely a support issue. That's a live chat support issue, 100% if that doesn't work. So thank you guys. Thank you, Uncle Social, Pavel, Malcolm, and good luck, Chromium Flash. I hope that absolutely works for you. If not, let us know. When you try that, come back, email me, hit us up, let me know, because I'm really curious about that, because that's something that'll happen to a ton of people. I'm sure if it happens to one, it happens to 1,000. I see on Facebook, Sean Wells, any news on Divi plus e-commerce? I don't know. I'm not privy to a lot of the major planning. We have a WooCommerce update that I honestly can't remember if we have published it or if we sneak peeked it, but I know that one's coming. If it's not out already, my brain kind of fried during that week. That was near the time that we did our company retreat, and I can't remember if it's out or coming. If it's not out already, it is coming. So, but other than that, I don't actually know any on the Divi and e-commerce plans in the future. There are some I know, but I don't know what they are. So yeah. Thank you guys. This is awesome. I love this kind of conversation, this much conversation. If you're tuning in late, if you're just joining in on this, I was moving out. That was all of the tutorials, or no, that was all the news, and I'm moving into the tutorials. In the description of this video, there are links to all the curated content that I found this week that I wanted to go through with you. We will absolutely not be able to get through all of it, but you can click through on every one of them and fill up your tabs, and make sure that you give some love to these content creators. And if you miss anything, remember you can always go back to the beginning of this stream, especially when it finishes up. It will be saved on YouTube and Facebook. I also see Uncle Social says how epic my quaff is looking this week. It's because I haven't had a haircut like I meant to, and had to do something with it. So, you know. So yes. Under the tutorials, the first one that I wanted to point out was one on the Elegant Things blog, actually, that I was really glad when this one came out, because it's kind of a perfect time for this particular article to be published. The React.js for WordPress users, it's a basic introduction to React for WordPress users. If you are a normal, regular viewer of the stream, you'll know that I am pushing you to get into React pretty hardcore because of Gutenberg and the Divi Builder. I mean, that's why. Matt Mullenweg said a couple of years ago that you should learn JavaScript deeply for the future of WordPress development, and right now we're moving into the era where we're going to see a lot of that. So looking at what the very basics of React are for you is a really good idea, and this is a good way to break down and look through to see if this is somewhere you want to go. It may or may not be, but this is a good place to start with that. So hopefully it will help you a little bit. I know reading through it kind of solidified for me that I'm not necessarily set out for the dev track like I had initially intended when I started freelancing, but I love knowing about it. And this kind of thing is great to know about, because it's where the ecosystem is going. Excuse me. I see that that Pavel is still having issues. He wants to modify a different module individually, adding CSS code from the internet, and in the general settings it allows you to do so, but not for every module or section. I don't understand why. Problem is, if I had any CSS code in the general section, it changes the whole page. Pavel, what you can do for that, if you need to, is go into your advanced settings, and there is a CSS ID on there, and just name the modules whatever you want them to be, like Module 1 or Module 2, Module 3, and then you can go into your general CSS and then use like hashtag Module 1 and then paste that code into the general settings, and then like hashtag Module 2, and it will just apply to the element that has that ID. So you can do that on a module by module basis if you go in and add an ID under the advanced settings there. It should say under there, I think it may be above actually where you put in the CSS. It will say CSS class and then CSS ID. Put it under the ID. You can do it under class as well, but since you're targeting individual modules instead of a type of module, it's just standard practice to do it as an ID on that one rather than a class. But that would be what I would do to check and see if that works. Hopefully that will. Let me know. And I see Studio G360. Love the name. It reminds me of Entertainment 720 on Parks and Rec, so good job. On the hover effects, you can see those in the visual builder, but not in the default editor. Do you think they'll ever make hover effects for that editor? No. All the new features are going to be in the visual builder only. We're moving toward, we had released a sneak peek or blog about it earlier. Man, I can't remember when it was. It was earlier this summer, talking about how we're going to be phasing out that version of the backend builder with one that's based on the visual builder code, so that they'll both line up like that. They're written, that was my way of mirroring things, and it didn't work. Right now, they're written in different JavaScript libraries. One's using, the backend builder's using Backbone, and the front end builder's using React, and so we can't do a lot of what we're doing with the front end builder in the back end right now. So so no, I apologize for that. Hello, Tobias. I also see Dawn said, how big a deal is a plugin that is compatible, quote unquote, with the current version of WordPress but hasn't been updated for several months? Tobias is right. There might be a security issue. For the most part, I don't worry about them too much, depending on what it is. I've had plugins on my site that haven't been updated in years that still work. I tend to move away from them if it goes really over a year. I look for something else. If something is under 6 months, usually, at least for me, I look at it and I kind of gauge what the plugin is. If it is a very important functionality plugin and it hasn't been updated in 6 or 7 months, that may give you an indication of the level of support that you may get, or kind of security holes that it may have in it that aren't going to get fixed. But if it's I don't want to say frivolous, but kind of extra feature that you're putting on your site, for the most part, there may not be any need for an update. The important part, I think, a lot of times is these days the hasn't been tested within the three latest major releases of WordPress. That's the one I pay attention to more than anything. And even then, I look and see when it was updated, what it's doing, because sometimes they still work. But like Tobias said, there can be issues because the WordPress core changes. And so whatever it's hooking into may have altered a little bit. But when it gets, and that's my personal thing, when it gets to about a year, I'm like, oh, why are these guys not looking at this plugin anymore? But when it's 3 to 6 months, I honestly don't think about it, because that's a pretty, unless it's something like WooCommerce, unless it's something, one of the major things that if it has a security issue that, you lose business and your life is ruined, that one I would not put a, 6 to 8 months between updates. But if it's something that really just adds to your site and kind of adds flourishes, like Cornify, go check that one out, y'all. I don't know if you remember it from a few weeks ago when I wrote an article at it. Just go look on the plugin repository for one called Cornify. Cornify. You're welcome. But yeah, that's awesome. Aaron, I see WooCommerce Mojo. I'm not sure what that is. Let me know. I'm not sure your question, because that's it with a question mark. Sorry. So yeah, Torque Mag. Well, actually, okay, I skipped one. Oh, excuse me. WP Lift put an article out this week that I think is super important, mega important, that if you don't do this and you haven't worked into the Google Search Console, you're doing yourself and your site and everything about your online business a major disservice. I did an article that somewhere, I think maybe at the very bottom, or maybe it came out last week, the one about local SEO, and then this week I did one on HTTPS and SSL, and it dealt a lot with going into the Google Search Console and making sure that Google was aware of your site. That is the big thing about Google Search Console. It gives you a lot of options that you can play with to let Google index your site, that you can see what Google indexes and what a sitemap looks like for it, where it's going, which pages have errors, all of this. Like, it is really good. It's an offshoot of the old Google Webmasters tools, and they have recently done an update to it where it has an all-new interface. It's really pretty now. Kind of looks like AdSense does now if you use it, you know, using the Google UI thing. I hate the new Gmail. And but Search Console's good. That if you don't use this, please click into the WP Lift article and follow their primer on getting this done, because it is imperative that you do this for you to really and truly rank in searches. It's very, very simple to do. It is easy. It says, you know, you add a small code snippet in the head section and it verifies that you're the owner. You can do this in Divi. It gives the examples of Astra, Genesis, Generate, Press. All of them, you can just add something in the head, and that's all it is. I think that they break it down on getting in there and doing it. Just please do. That's really it. If you don't do this, make sure that you are. Then with kind of that in mind, I found the how to develop a strong internal linking structure for your website. And this one hit on some really, really, really good ideas that I wanted you guys to be aware of. Because everybody knows, you know, internal links are important, but this one has an internal linking strategy for you. And that's really why I like this. Like, a lot of people just kind of link to stuff willy-nilly on their blog, and they don't really give thought to where specifically they're linking to, because this is one way that there is a way to set up a hierarchy in your site using these tips to make sure that Google and other search engines crawl your site and get the absolute best experience possible, the best information possible, and the best just page that they can get, best idea of your site. So they talk about obviously using internal links frequently. I mean, that is the most basic thing in terms of setting up an internal link structure that you can that I can say is use them. Sorry, that one of Yoast's things that they say now in the SEO part is you have no internal links. Consider adding some. That's very important because they want to see that you're writing about the same topics, that you have information, that you're a credible source for this. So go and add links to it. It says on on TorqueMag, that when it comes to your web pages and blog posts, a solid rule of thumb is to try and include at least one internal link per 250 words. It's not bad. Good idea. That is the same rule that I gave my students whenever I told them that they needed to put a source into their research papers, that if you go about 250 words without citing a source, you probably should. And it's the exact same thing here. That's what you're doing. You're giving more information or where you got that information in the first place. So whether you are a freshman comp student or a professional who is working on internal links, every 250 words, tell me where you got that stuff. And it says link to a wide variety of internal content. Don't always link to the same page. Don't always link to your about page. Don't always link to your favorite blog. Link to a lot of different things so that the search crawlers can basically do what we do on Wikipedia. They go down the click hole. That they click and then they see a new link and they click on it and they keep clicking to see how all of these are interconnected and circle their way back. Though I doubt it will be like with Wikipedia and everyone will eventually end on philosophy on your blog, unless you link to philosophy on Wikipedia on every one of your pages. What I thought was good was they were talking about creating a hierarchy of internal links where you can use a pyramid-like structure to define this hierarchy using content categories and subcategories. This is new to me, actually, using subcategories, and it's something I'm working on with personal content to make sure that I have the right subcategories, you know, within these major areas that I talk about. I want to be able to focus in, but I also don't want it to seem like this is the primary thing that I write about. And a lot of times, like Yoast SEO will let you set a primary category if you select 2 of them. So you can do stuff like that. And then they talk about keeping your anchor links and anchor text relevant. Make sure that your links are actually to something that you're talking about in the article, please. If you're writing about Star Wars, and all of a sudden you link out to an article you wrote about water bottles, they probably aren't going to be connected unless, you know, you're talking about fitness in some way, or, you know, running one of the Disney Star Wars half marathons or something that you may have a need for. But in general, if you're arguing about lightsaber crystals, then maybe linking to a post that you wrote about water bottles may not, you know, do anything but get you a link, and then Google will penalize you for it. So that's something to think about. Like I said, good article. They go into a lot more depth than that. I think that it's worth your time to read that. Torque Mag always puts out really, really good content, and I'm very rarely disappointed whenever I click through one of theirs. I also see a lot of comments while I've been rambling just a little bit. Dawn, let's see. Dawn wants a simple real estate plugin. They do seem to be more complex than you want to ever use, or you want using. Have you ever used WooCommerce for this purpose? Don't need IDX import. I have not ever used anything like that for real estate. You technically could. Thinking about it, depending on how simple you mean, I know that there are some out there that I've seen on Roundup lists before that I don't have off the top of my head where they were, but that tied in with MLS and pulled it easily that way instead of having to manually enter them. But if you do it with something like WooCommerce, you would have to manually enter everything. Something like Essential Grid would be able to do it. But that is manually entering these as web pages. So I'm not sure if that would be what you're looking for. But I don't know specifically real estate. Maybe someone else will. Tobias says, oh, actually, it was the Let's Freak channel. Love that name. Good job. Can I make an e-commerce site with Divi theme? Absolutely. If Tobias chimes in and says yes, if you want to use the Divi Builder to design product pages and archives, you have to use a plugin, though. Yeah, for that, I use the, what's it called? The Divi Builder Everywhere, I think, from Divi Space is the one that I use. That's going to be changed, yay, in the theme customizer when it comes out, which will also be where we have the customizable header and footer. Just to head that one off, that's where all of that's going to be, where you'll be able to do the archive and category pages. Don't know why, and product pages and stuff. Tobias, the WooCommerce update I mentioned earlier will let you do a lot more with the WooCommerce stuff, but you're right, it doesn't let you do specifically the product pages. It's going to let you interact with elements and things like that. It's really cool. But yeah. Speaking of WooCommerce, just to throw it out there, I'm not going to even linger on it, but Torque Mag again did a how to choose a host for your WooCommerce website. Very good stuff there. You always need to know if you can rely on where your site's going to live when you put that much time and energy into it. So yeah, They also have an article. Just skip one down just to say TorqueMag, just to stay on task here. Using React for WordPress Gutenberg development. Last week I mentioned an article that they had that was basically, you know, why you need React these days for if you're going into WordPress. This is the third in that series about specifically using it. So if you followed that one last week, then there are a couple more articles for you to check in on. So that one's really cool. Then WP Beginner had one that I like. That's actually something that we can probably use with Divi as well to be able to add this in. It's how to easily add JavaScript to WordPress pages or posts. And this is something that we may not want on every page. Sometimes you actually want just a script that runs on one page, and they've got 3 different ways of doing it. You can use site-wide, like they say, use headers and footers. I mean, a lot of people, you know, throw their JavaScripts into their .js files, I say JavaScripts, but all their files into the footer of a page to make page loading faster, so it doesn't load immediately before any of the other elements. It can add the JavaScript manually using the code. You can go into functions, PHP, they say, or anything like that. And then they have, you can add code inside posts or pages using a plugin, which you absolutely can. You don't necessarily have to use a plugin. You can do it in the HTML. Don't. Of a post or page, don't do it. And then you can also use one of the ways that I suggest using that for you guys, because I'm assuming you're Divi users if you're watching this, is a Divi code module. If you're an Elementor user, that kind of thing as well. There's always something that is just an HTML or code block. There's a widget you can use, the HTML widget, that you can just drag into your sidebar. If every page that you want it on has that, there's an HTML widget you can do that just drop that JavaScript in there. Not the cleanest way to do it. Will not lie. That is not best practice by any means whatsoever, but that is ways to do it. But if you're looking for different ways just to make sure that you can get that script in there, that's bunches of ways to do it from WP Beginner. And then for Uncle Social, I had to throw in how to set up Facebook instant articles for your WordPress posts. Figure he's going to want to do that a lot since he just absolutely loves Facebook. See what I did there? And it's an inside joke for normal viewers, for our regulars. And then, but really, Flywheel did a how to set up Facebook instant articles with WordPress, and it's really simple to do. We still got a lot of traffic from Facebook. We've talked about this a bunch, advertising, everything else, but Facebook instant articles are very important. They're like Google AMP articles, you know, the ones that load basically instantly. That's what the instant articles do. They get like 70%, they're 70% readers, readers are 70% less likely to abandon an article that was posted if they click through it with the instant articles, because it loaded so much faster. By the time they load it, if it takes a long time to load, you know, everybody's attention span is really short on social, that they don't want anything long. I don't either. That is, if it's loading so much faster, they're already invested in your article, so they're going to get further through it. They're going to finish it and more likely stay on your site. And it says those with slower connections are more likely to read an instant article than other content, which is absolutely true. I mean, if I see even me, I mean, I don't even like Facebook that much, but even for Google AMP, a lot of times I'll be like, it's quick. I'll see what it is and click it over something that I know doesn't. And that's silly. I realize that's silly for me to do. But it's, you know, it's all psychology. So reaching wider audiences, that kind of thing. But there are downsides to it where people have said, you know, companies have expressed concerns that Facebook's trying to dictate how they publish their content. True. Instant articles are basically stripped down versions of your site. Yes. Very true. That is not like Google AMP where it loads everything like you have it. So it's any widgets or sign-up forms won't be visible, just the article itself. It's like when you hit the special reading thing on Safari on iOS, and it just gives you the article text. Limits photos and videos, stuff like that. So it does load faster. There are pros and cons on it, but it walks you through how to do that. Thank you, Reed. That is one of my favorite puns. In the YouTube comments, Reed is like, readers? Thank you. I love puns. Puns are my lifeblood. Keep them coming. And like all my friends send me their worst puns forever and all the time, and it makes me so happy. But yeah, check that out if you're interested in Facebook Instant Articles to just see if it's worth your time setting up. And Flywell's awesome, and so you want to give them love. Yeah. I'm trying to break that habit of saying so much, because it really is just a filler sound, but you know how it is. Y'all know. So the very last one under tutorials here is learn how to build JavaScript plugins for WordPress. It's a WP Tavern article, and it is basically a walkthrough and set of code for PHP developers to be able to move into JavaScript if you've not done anything like that before. And what's really cool about it, and the reason that I linked to this, and I linked to the tutorial itself, because he put so much energy into writing this README file that it really is a tutorial in and of itself. That, yes, you get the code, yes, you're going to be using a lot of it. It is fantastic. That just looking through this is mind-boggling that somebody just puts this up for free. But you should totally check that out if there is any inkling of desire that you want to get into JavaScript development for plugins, because it walks you through everything you have to do. So if you have tuned in just recently, that's all of the tutorials that I've got this week. Moving into the resources section, all of the links that we talk about are in the description of the video, and you can always go back to the beginning of this video whenever we finish, because it's saved on both Facebook and YouTube. So feel free to do that, or you can watch over and over again, which is fine. Just keep looping it. It'll be on the Elegant Themes Facebook and YouTube pages. I see Reed ask, for this dynamic content, is there a way to make a global product page that appends all of the other product pages? Reed, I'm going to be completely honest with you and tell you that I don't know, because I don't understand the dynamic content feature well enough and in depth enough to say yes or no. I think that's the way you're supposed to be able to do it. Like, from what I understand, you can do that. Don't hold me to it.